Sorry about that. I just about pushed the exit button when I was supposed to push the record button. So thanks for the reminder. Again, as you make buildings more efficient, then embodied carbon becomes more and more important. We'll have to get that embodied carbon out of our construction as well if we want to get to net zero, right? So what are some of the things that we can do to reduce embodied carbon? Sorry for the small print here. I kind of swiped this off of someone else's presentation, but they're all the things that we just talked about, right? All the things we just talked about from a standpoint of reducing material usage, right? Reducing material usage and using salvaged or recycled materials, all those things, reduce the amount of embodied carbon. So again, what we just talked about, repurposing, adaptive reuse, salvage materials, optimization, right? Through we just heard in both of those YouTubes about module sizing and advanced framing, specified materials that naturally sequester carbon, right? Those would be renewable or rapidly renewable materials, specified materials manufactured with renewable energy. So again, if you're the designer in your specifications, you can call out that materials must have such and such percentage of renewable energy used in their production. Design for durability, right? Make a quality, long-lasting building. Materials that appropriate for the climate, supply chain, source locally, et cetera, right? So these are things we just talked about. Putting them in the language of carbon kind of makes them more important, kind of brings it all home to serving to reduce the carbon content of our buildings. Okay, let me switch gears here. Hold on. Come on. And let's bring this back to talk about strategies, right? C&D waste was background information related to the LEED MR, or Materials and Resources Credit category. So let's look and see how LEED looks at, how the LEED rating system looks at some of this stuff. Right, again, here's our scorecard, materials and resources, 13 points possible. Again, B, D, and C are building design and construction. Those credits are going to focus on design of the building, right? So 13 out of our possible 100 points can come from the materials and resources category. You see there's some prerequisites there as well, right? Remember, prerequisite on the scorecard, it says required or a must-have, things that you have to do. Credits are optional. Right, so let's look at some of the prerequisites. Storage and collection of recyclables. Right, so in the construction process, right, we want to make it so the users of the building have a good place to bring their recyclables when the building is built. Right, so you want to design that into your project. Right, prerequisite is also C&D waste management planning. So again, LEED is asking you as the designer or the construction professional to make sure that you're, as it says here, establishing waste diversion goals and tracking how that material gets handled on the job site. So again, things that you as the designer would do as part of your construction documents. Right, in the MR credit category kind of looks at credits in three components. Number one is conservation of materials. Right? We want to eliminate the need for new materials. We want to use environmentally preferable materials. Sorry to stumble on that word. Right? Look at how they're sourced, how they were produced, and if possible, try to stimulate the market for responsibly produced products. Right? Just like we as consumers want to try to exercise our influence in the marketplace to have people bring better products to the marketplace. You know, one thing you as a designer can do as a construction professional is try to stimulate that market as well by the way that you specify products. Then obviously we have waste management practices on the job site. Right, we've seen this slide before. What are some of the key features of green buildings? Well, one of them is a wise use of materials. Again, built with recycled or reused materials, materials that are renewable or rapidly renewable, materials that obtained locally or near the building site, and materials that are non-toxic, right? Those are some of the 4 bullet points of how we reduce materials use in our projects. Right, again, reuse existing buildings, salvage materials, plan for smaller, more compact communities. It would also be true for buildings. Design for smaller, more flexible homes and buildings. We've heard that a couple times, right? The first YouTube we talked about building smaller. A couple weeks ago, one of you did a report on Susan Susanka's, you know, less quantity, higher quality, dual purpose spaces, less unused space. We just looked at efficient framing techniques, right? All ways of conserving materials in our construction, right? What are environmentally preferable materials? Right, here's some of the attributes: locally or regionally processed. You know, in LEED World, that's within 100 miles of the project site. Sustainably grown and harvested. Designed for the end of life. What does that mean? Well, designed for the end of life means that when that product has reached the end of its useful life, the end of its service life, it can be removed from service and be recycled or turned into something new as opposed to being thrown away. We want to look at recycled content, bio-based materials, free of toxins, long-lasting, durable, reusable. Again, these are probably a little bit harder here. The last one, made in factories that support human health and workers' rights. But again, those are things that you as the designer can ask for in your construction documents, in your project manual. Right, we talked about wood as a environmentally preferable material. We want to make sure that wood is coming from a sustainably managed or sustainably forested source. So having certified wood in your project manual, you know, ensures that wood is coming from a responsible source. Right, here's the term chain of custody, right? Chain of custody means that, you know, there's tracking as to, you know, where that wood is, you know, where that wood was grown, how it was harvested, where it was manufactured, et cetera, et cetera. Right, we saw previously about a linear model of resource use, you know, cradle to grave, take, make, or waste. Again, one of you guys did, and I should have my list of book reports up, but one of you guys looked at the this guy's book. But yeah, they're talking about cradle to cradle design, products that can be recycled or reused at the end of its useful life. right? This is their example here is this office chair that, it is hopefully made from recycled materials, and at the end of its life can be taken apart and those materials used again in some form or fashion rather than being thrown away. LEED is going to distinguish in the way that they look at things between pre-consumer and post-consumer waste. Right, pre-consumer waste is essentially it's waste material that comes from the factory, from the waste stream during the manufacturing process. Post-consumer waste or post-consumer material is stuff that is recycled by the consumer after it's been, delivered and utilized. In LEED, the LEED MR credit categories will encourage you to use tools to help evaluate the impact of the materials that you are specifying or considering to use in your project. One of them is a life cycle assessment, or LCA. This is a tool that allows, as it says here, architects and other building professionals to understand the energy use and impacts associated with the life cycle of a material. Right, so we want to look at all the steps involved in procurement and manufacturing, construction, and operation of that material. Right, we want to pick materials that have the lowest life cycle impact. Again, that's important when we're starting to think about embodied carbon. Right, an environmental product declaration. Again, this would be a document that's provided by the supplier of the material that gives you as a designer or a specifier information about the impact of that product that allows you to make responsible decisions about specifying materials and products that have lower impact. So how do we go about figuring out the attributes, the environmental attributes of a product? Well, we can do one or two things. We can rely on the claim that the manufacturer makes, or we can look for some third party that certifies the attributes of that product. I'm going to make sure there's no greenwashing in our green building, right? We're trying really hard to have high performance buildings. We're going to make sure that we're not choosing products that don't really live up to the standards that we're looking for. Right, so what's a first party claim? Right, a first party claim, I think our potato chips are all natural, right? That's the manufacturer claiming something about their product. A third party certification, right? If you go to the potato chip aisle and you want to buy potato chips or food products that are actually all natural or organic, then you look for some symbol like this on your potato chips or your breakfast cereal, whatever you're looking for, right? That indicates that some third party has certified the characteristics of that particular product. Right, same thing here. We can say, oh, our building is green. We put up a green building. But the whole goal of LEED and other rating systems is a third party that actually certifies that this is a sustainable or green building, right? So this is a third party certification versus a first party claim. Right, so let's look at some of the third party certifications that you might run across in the LEED MR credit category. Right, here's our FSC certified wood. So again, in your construction documents, you would call out, lumber may be, must be sourced from FSC certified and bear the bear the label, et cetera, et cetera. Right, here's two rating systems for paints and cleaning products. Again, if we're looking for low VOC paints, right, these, you could say paints shall be low VOC and shall bear the green seal or the MPI mark, right? Then we know that we know what we're getting. Right, here's GreenGuard. This would be carpeting, interior furniture, systems furniture, et cetera, et cetera. Adhesives and sealants, right? We have all sorts of things in our building, you know, construction adhesives, caulks, and sealants. Again, we want to specify those as being low VOCs. VOC is volatile organic compound, right? That's a toxin. We want to keep it out of our buildings. Right, here's VOCs in office furniture. Right, so this is the Furniture Manufacturers Association, right? Again, they have a standard for low VOC furniture. Right, here's carpeting and adhesives. CRI, I think, again, is the Carpet and Rug Institute. Again, that would be a trade organization of carpet manufacturers that's gotten together to help designers and specifiers specify more environmentally responsible products. Right, we also have some other certifications. Again, these are things that you can call out in your project manual to make sure you're getting environmentally preferable products. Ceramic tile, appliances, et cetera, right? Right, as an architect, you know, the product in this marketplace changes rapidly. So it's up to you to stay abreast of, you know, what's out in the marketplace and specify accordingly. If you're trying to have a building that's green all the way through, right? Inside and out, carpeting, furniture, et cetera, et cetera. Again, in the LEED rating system, it's gonna ask you to keep track of all this stuff if you want to go after these particular credits that relate to environmentally preferable products. So different ways of doing the calculation. The rating system details will spell this out. But again, you not only need to specify, but you're going to need to keep track of, you know, what materials you were actually able to successfully, you know, specify that way and procure. Right, we talked a couple of times last week in this about ways of reducing construction waste. Obviously, the first thing is design buildings that produce less waste. Right, in the first YouTube, he talked about modular, you know, designing around a standard module that ties to standard dimensions of materials. So then we reduce cutoff waste, you know, design things on a 2-foot or a 4-foot module, you know, rather than 5 or 7 feet or something that's not related to the dimensions of what your materials are. Develop a construction waste management policy. Again, that would be you as the designer specifying that and then imposing that and expecting the general contractor or the contractor to follow your practice. Establish a tracking system. Again, you're going to require the contractor to provide hauler reports about where that waste goes and how it's handled. right? If we look at the EBOM or O&M, operations and maintenance for existing buildings, again, the LEED rating system will focus on waste management in operations. Things like a solid waste management plan, specifying green materials, specify green custodial products and practices, maintain recycling programs for building occupants. You know, a waste stream audit. Waste stream audit is actually diving in the dumpster and seeing what actually the people in your building are throwing out. Again, at Triton, we do some of that stuff. We talked about when we looked at H building way back when, about Triton's use of responsible and green cleaning products and practices. Okay, any questions? Sorry, we're going to be moving quickly here. I got a lot of ground to cover here this last week. So again, that was some background information and some information about the LEED MR, or materials and resources credit category. I have to watch the clock carefully here. Let's do this. We are coming up to the top of the hour. Rather than me spending a couple minutes getting started here, why don't we take 10 minutes or so, and we will jump into LEED credit category EQ, or indoor environmental quality. So let's come back at 57, 3 minutes before the hour, and we will explore this credit category.